We are, and I don't know if this is going to be our last cast, if we're going to finish the game, because I don't know how hard the deductions are going to get or what, but here's what I know. I've been very clear that I thought Lord Strongheart's been pretty cool for most of the two games, giving us authority to do whatever we needed. So I don't want him to be part of this, and yet I'm losing hope.
This is just taking too many twists and turns, so I don't know what to think yet.
I mean, seriously. Yeah, we're gonna find out Iris is the culprit. Alright, let's try this out. So let's go over a couple things that I think you were getting a little tired on last time. Uchida Kazuma Sogi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. I think I pressed him on the last two, but you weren't here. I'm going to press him again, okay? On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. Outside your cabin in the first-class area of the SS Grouse, you mean? Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door. I can confirm the presence of the crewman guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night, I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin. At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner. The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while we waited for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as the Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly. As I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding? Not the most convincing of sentries, really. In truth, those were my thoughts too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while, and then I left him there and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still out the door when you left? Yes. He glared at me as I walked past. You see, that proves it. If there'd been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved.
Hold it!
The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean? That's right. A muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't once move from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. But as it happens, he's a vital witness now. There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot, and it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard that. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired. Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash. Oh. You will recall that my cabin was in the first-class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like steerage where the judicial assistants go. I didn't mean... But a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole? Oh yes, you're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel eaten out by woodworm. No doubt he didn't find an actual bullet. That's the hole in this argument.
He picked it out.
Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewman to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, as the defense implies, I would have been arrested on and would never have made it to Britain in the first place. Very true, the witness's logic is sound. Since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question, we must assume that the witness is telling the truth. Heh heh heh. I'm glad you've seen sense, my lord. I know Kazuma's already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable, using Kazuma-sama's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Kazuma manipulated Judge Jigoku too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear. It's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Kazuma-sama's part. One way or another, though, Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard that steamship. So you mean Judge Jigoku must be lying? I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment, but you must destroy him, Mr. Naruhodo. Let me see what that evidence was that we uncovered. There was the telegram. Remember that. And this was...
The wind-up thing for his watch.
Yeah. Evacuation drill itinerary following departure.
That's why they couldn't hear the gunshot. They were all upstairs but them.
Oh, look to required assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. in order to review evacuation procedures. The drill will take 20 minutes. Or it could be that, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like it's this one. Well, we'll see. I'm just gonna save now, because I mean, it's the last case of this two-part crazy adventure, so...
Objection!
You go, girl. Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take aboard the steamship on the 31st. What? Where did you get that? It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port at exactly 10 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts. And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one.
Ooh, look at that look.
Jeez.
Looks like a nasty devil.
What's funny is that he looks so sweet in court. Not in this court, but when he's judge, he's just like, oh, it's nice to see the young people just...
I don't think he's a good person.
Oh, God. Look at him. And, I mean, the fact that he already admitted that there was an assassination plot that he took part of, it's kind of bad. Terrible even. Summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime.
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Ryosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false, your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night, I'm certain of it. But the defense has the evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October? Oh, but that's his! So that could be it. Think it's this, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah.
Take that!
Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch? A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Shigoku. Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer? Wow!
Objection!
You said I was not guilty! Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Shigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you early in the year. Sorry? If I had known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. Wow. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. Very well, then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October. You didn't like that he said I was wrong to acquit you.
It was nasty.
Yeah. Of course, as a man of law, I have no intention of obstructing justice.
Really? You just talked about acquitting, or like
Yeah, like...
being mean and sending someone to jail.
Yeah, like... terrible. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an ippon seo throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that. Oh, that's the throw he did to the reporter, I'm assuming. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It had nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain, because his body was found in London.
That's not true. The autopsy report with the rotten fish.
Ippon seo... I'm probably pronouncing it terribly. A common jujitsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? I actually can't. What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. I've no doubt that the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Oh yeah, because we're assuming that he's the Reaper, so that does work with previous logic in the case. Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Shigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination. Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Jesus, true colors are showing. What an awful thing to say. Nasty man. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna skip this one.
Hold it! Hold it!
Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson. Yes, though at the time I didn't know the man's name. There was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners. By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose. That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction. But I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before. Believe it or not, most of us haven't. Anyway, there was no time to call for the help of the crewmen at the door, so I dealt with the man myself.
Hold it! Hold it!
Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it? Ha 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 ha. My Ippon Seoi is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you. But surely all the commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it? Yes, of course, he burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape. The outstanding guard does it again. Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippon Seoi throw. God, I hope I'm not too far off the mark there. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked. Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say? Not that the man was spared for long, a bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place. Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujitsu throw. Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin, because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall. Ha 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 ha. What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain.
This is where you need to do the autopsy report.
This one?
Yeah, because she can't see the time of death because of the fish. And they tried to disguise that he may have been killed somewhere else.
That's true, but he's saying the body was found in London. But yeah, that's true, because...
He's saying it didn't happen in there because the body was found in London, but
Yeah.
he killed him and he put him on the refrigerator
Well, let's
and
try.
then redressed them.
Let's try.
Objection!
Well, let's press him on it first. Well, not first, obviously second now. But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive.
Okay, maybe it's somewhere in here.
Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling. Or is it stripling? You know what that is. The inspector was killed on the steamship in France. How on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at the same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passenger luggage is expected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels, and I would like to think that border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Let's kill that idea then. But perhaps not. This is such... I like it when she does that and he looks all like defeated. We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony with your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. God, he's pissed.
Hold it!
There's an idea. Think about it. Stripling or stripling?
I think it's stripling.
All passengers and crew disembarked at the same time and passed through the same checks at the border. The symposium guests were then driven straight to the hotel in carriages organized by the ministry. And we met you as soon as you arrived at the hotel.
It's
So
in
you
the
did?
trunk, because there's a picture of him standing and there's a big-ass trunk next to him.
Hold on a sec. Let me look at that picture again.
He's right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, then remind me, did I have a corpse over my shoulder at the time? What? No. So in agreement then, I couldn't possibly have brought the inspector's body back to Britain. Unless, of course, they developed some clever device these days to instantly move things from A to B.
Well.
Funny you should say that. Professor Harebrain's invention didn't actually work, if you remember, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, of course. The defense has become unusually quiet, I notice. Yes, because there's really nothing more to say. So that's his story. Well, I suppose if you think about it, whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say Mr. Naruhodo must have been murdered there, do we? Is that a veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one? And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Shochigoku's cabin, the body would have to have been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people, so there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit, however. That could be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay, let's try that picture. Good memory on that picture.
Well, you're gonna have to, because he said there's no possible way to transport it back to victim. Or, tongue-tied. Some point in here, the autopsy report's gonna come into play, and then that picture. I just don't know what order.
Let's
or
see.
where.
Well, let me just press him just to be safe on the first one again. Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean? Apparently Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course. He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though. He had his trench coat and mustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced. But the man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. You mean me? Who else? Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head. The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship. Certainly all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back in my cabin. You entered without any inkling of suspicion. That's right, none whatsoever. I think the fact that he said, "Oh, did you see me carrying a corpse when you saw me?" I think we should just go show the picture. Because we can say this is where we saw you, we don't know what's in your trunk. I know they said they checked the luggage, but...
He might have special circumstances because he's ministry and judicial.
That's true, yeah. So, let's try it.
Objection!
There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Rinosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. Ah, yeah. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London, while all those passport checks and luggage search at the border took rather a lot of time, I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. Didn't have to go through any of that. I knew you were jealous. Ha ha ha. That's actually kind of creepy because that means there was a dead body in there.
Hiding in plain sight.
I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku? It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting? I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us inside Shochigoku's trunk.
What a nasty man.
I know.
I think Tobias Gregson was actually on to him and was going to arrest him.
I think so. Order in court. I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk, how horrifying.
Aw.
I know, I feel so bad for her to even think that. And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Dr. Gorey, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages, and the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Shigoku.
Ugh.
Kind of just, it looks could kill.
Yeah, he's not happy.
No, he is not. I mean, I was already kind of intimidated when he first threw that reporter, and I'm like, God, he's huge. I didn't notice that.
Big man.
However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. I love that, because he's so, now he's kind of talking down to the judge. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Ha 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 ha. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move letting Asogi and you embark on the study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Shigoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused Baroque Van Zeeks shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that how the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly? I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim. That's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Let's look at the autopsy again. Victim was shot in the chest at close range from the front, resulting in instant death. Well, Well, it can't be this, because this is literally saying it's instant death.
Alright, let's go through everything piece by piece.
Yeah. No, but I like
Picture
this.
of him laying on the floor. Go to that.
Poor Gregson. I'm still impressed this game killed him off. Sometimes that stuff can be khaki, like...
Oh, that! The firecrackers! Because they were timed to make the bang.
I don't think that proves he didn't die instantly, though. We're trying to prove something, a piece of evidence that shows that he didn't die instantly.
Oh.
Let's see.
We go back to the telegram. What did that say?
This is the,
Oh.
let me, there's one...
What did it say before this where it says, but this evidence clearly contradicts the claims?
And I want to say... The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale. Quite simply because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. So I guess for either...
It's the firecrackers, because... I don't think it has to do with him dying instantly. It has to do with... He was already... Like, they timed it out. Like, it's a staged scene.
Yeah, because we know it was staged with the candlestick. Does that... But that proves he didn't die there?
Yeah, because why would you have to set the timer?
You would think, though, that we would have established he didn't die there with that piece of evidence, but...
It's either the firecracker or the candles. Because he didn't die in Fresno, or else you wouldn't have to rig something to make that hot. No? Okay.
Japanese really are cute to pronounce nonsensical metal and present nonsensical evidence. Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. Do you even have a mirror?
What did it say? Was he killed there?
Was the victim killed in the room on Fresno Street, or was he moved there after his death? There's one piece of evidence that clearly shows the answer. We have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly. Perhaps you should try to present the correct one this time, then. Are you going to try again, or can't you hold your hand steady enough to point it out? Well, I think it's the autopsy, because evidence suggests measures may have been taken to disguise the time of death.
Okay.
I don't see why you would need to do that if he died then and there.
Try the arbor, the candle arbor.
Yeah, the candle?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be, but... Let's see. Was the victim killed in the room on Fresno Street, or was he moved there after his death? There's one piece of evidence we have that shows the answer to that question surprisingly clearly.
Is it his trunk?
Yeah, that's true. There's all this stuff on it, but let's try it.
Take that!
I'm at a loss. I'm not really sure what they're...
Maybe we should stop and think is the
Well,
problem.
I mean, I'm stopping and thinking and, like...
No, I mean, like, we just need to kind of look through this. Does it have to do with the time that it's stopped? But then I feel like we would have already known it wasn't based on watch. Notification. Jones, we need you again.
Well, I mean, we could. Well, if you do that, does it present it to them? Or...
Yeah, it's going to present it to them. We can't use it right now. Illustrious blade passed down through generations of the Asogi clan. Okay. Out of introduction, reprimand for Mr. Vigil, his wife. I don't remember finding anything out about this, though. Okay, so we know it was issued a while ago, but that doesn't prove anything with... Let's see... It wasn't the autopsy.
Oh, because he's curled up?
Why would that be?
Because he shouldn't have been able to move. He's tightly curled up. So he didn't die instantly. Because he was inside the trunk. That's why he has that position.
That's why he's curled up. Does that contradict the claim, though? Because I think what you said is 100% right. I'm just trying to see, would that prove... Like, would him being curled up prove that it couldn't have happened at Fresno Street?
If I just shot you at Fresno Street and you died instantly, you would just fall back. You wouldn't have the opportunity to curl up.
Let's try it.
Thank God.
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. You go again, girl. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that.
Being in the trunk.
See, that's what I dig about this game, though, that it does follow that kind of logic. You know, it doesn't... I mean, I'm sure it's not perfect, but I feel like they go to some lengths to get their science right, or else it would just be so difficult. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Dead.
Not if he's... yeah. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Shigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? God, that face.
Looks like a demon.
According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Ah. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way.
Trunk!
Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting. The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor from the inside of a large travel trunk. No, you're quite right, the shape of the body. It looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. I like how, like, when we first saw this picture, we just didn't think of that. It just looked like he died. Judge Goku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Oh boy.
Sweaty demon.
Present my trunk. I refuse. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. In other words, Judge Goku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. The Minister of Foreign Affairs. At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be, you will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Order in the court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it? Oh my god. Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Asogi? What? Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. What? You... Dear God, outrageous. So it was you. You admit... No, he doesn't. I know what he's gonna do. I admit to nothing more than what I've said. I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna say Kazuma was the one who murdered him and he was transporting it out. That's what he's gonna... That's why he's saying, have you no shame?
Probably.
Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he's already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. Oh. That's right, who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi. You. And that's the thing, like, if I never thought you'd stoop to this, Shishiro Jigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. Like, if we contradict him, I doubt Kazuma would be like, your logic is flawed. The witness is clearly telling the truth.
Like, alright, you got him.
Yeah, like, this is a very interesting dynamic now.
I'm starting to think that the judge is the real professor, not Asogi's dad.
Not Asogi's dad.
He let Asogi's dad
take the blame
for it.
And he shot him when he tried to get out of the grave.
Yep, because someone believed him. And that's what, like, and then, no, I forgot what else I was going to tell you. Oh, and I think Tobias figured it out and was going to...
Because not only was he big on that case, but that notice board is probably him trying to figure out the Reaper.
Yeah.
Not because he's the actual guy in charge. Like, I think Van Zeeks is wrong about that. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? But that's the thing, then why wouldn't you just say that if you were telling the truth?
Protect him because he was friends with his dad.
Yeah. Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. You wouldn't. So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense, what is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jikoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jikoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is, And on that note, I just need to take a break for a second.
too.
Yes. But we'll say impossible after we're done. I'll let you go first. This is pretty intense. Whew. Alright, she'll be back soon, and then we will be saying impossible. Alright. So, I say we pin this on Asogi. It's possible.
Impossible. Wait, the idea that the mission could have been committed by...
Yeah, no, it's impossible. I was just joking about saying possible. Wouldn't that be something?
I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but...
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have a piece of evidence that shows. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claim that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. Has this song played yet?
No.
I remember this song. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? Is it the blade?
Didn't he disembark off the ship immediately?
That's what he says. I don't know if we have proof of that.
The only thing you haven't presented is the gun, but I don't know how that
Yeah, and it was found on Fresno Street. I don't really...
Oh, yeah!
What?
It would be the gun, because if he killed... Well, I guess he could have planted the gun there, too.
Yeah, I don't think it... Let's see... I know this has all this on it, but I don't see how... that would prove he didn't. Logical reasoning can prove it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Osogi to commit the crime.
I don't think it's the telegram. I don't think it's the crown. I don't think it's the evacuation.
And I can't see why it would be the Great Sword. Price Sword's tip has a small piece missing. I know it seems that he used this on this, but I don't see how that would prove that it was impossible.
Why did he go in there, though?
Yeah, we still don't know that.
I mean, it might be the trunk showing that, like... Yeah. I don't know. I have no reasoning.
I mean, I can kind of see how, like, well... You know, he clearly tried to use his sword for whatever, so he wasn't using the gun. But that seems like a weird stretch and not the actual answer. I'm tempted, though. Let me try this. You're making the evidence weep here, Rinosuke Naruhodo. Sorry. Every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They're not playthings you can toss around the courtroom for entertainment. Boy. Never mind the evidence, you're about to make me weep, Mr. Naruhodo. I can't upset Susato-san or I'll end up being upset too. We know a member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first-class cabins nearly all the time, so as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without it being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed.
Oh, would he have already been off the ship when they did the drill?
The thing is, how could we prove that Osogi couldn't have done it?
Because they both would have been in the room at the same time? Because at the time, isn't it at 10 p.m.? And he would have already been off the ship? I don't know. What'd you just present? Oh,
Which trunk?
Hmm.
We don't know if he was on sentry duty. We understand when the crime could have been committed. Well, let's try your idea. This itinerary for crew members of the SS Grouse, my lord. This is conclusive proof. Itinerary? How does that prove anything?
Why is the music still playing?
Why wouldn't it still play? The music stopped playing when I got it wrong, remember? for this one part. When he said, "You're making the evidence weep," the music stopped.
Oh.
It's going because it's some epic song. That's why it's
Oh.
going. Jochigoku, the moment you acknowledged that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to 20 minutes, the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock is indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Now clearly the murder could only have been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Osogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, "I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent the night at the boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning." Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Osogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship, just waiting for his chance. No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And, as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. All extremely easy to verify and undeniable proof. There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man. Oh dear!
He's gonna break the bench, isn't he?
Another bench broken. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported... Is it Tobias or Tobias?
I think it's Tobias.
Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Shishiro Jigoku?
Bring him out down. Want to take him out?
It was a damn trial 10 years ago. That's when all this began. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. He's gonna break the bench again. It's over. My life is over.
Why? Please do share.
Yes, because there are definitely still things to be. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan, a Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that you decided to recruit Mr. Osogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain, and you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement, because I was already on my way to Britain at the time in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation: to eliminate the mark myself personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume. That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain, so I enlisted the help of my British counterpart, and made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. What? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation, the Reaper himself. Ah. So that means the assassin exchange was all planned by the Reaper. I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time waiting for the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came round and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British-issued gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse, which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit, so I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel, then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then, so I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case, so I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene, the inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at that room at around 4:45, so I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later, so that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagined it was the bag of fish and chips. I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat when I moved the body in the to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but, well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sort of details of what I did. But it's not over. We don't know who the British counterpart is.
I'm starting to wonder if it's Strongheart.
Yeah, I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough. I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Well, he's guilty, but Van Zieks isn't. Shishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you shall be found. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of his body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Neverhodo. Yes, thank you. Something wrong? Yes, because something's unfinished. I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries as a prosecutor. As you wish. Now for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant Baroque Van Zieks. Oh boy. It's Kazuma. The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel? The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, Baroque Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Osagi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Shishiro Jigoku, but it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into the sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku, who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Baroque Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? Well, he has it in for Van Zieks. Order. The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build the case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks, and I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well. whilst it's extremely irregular. I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Holy smokes! Oh look, I got a new one in. Uh-oh. Here we go. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Six. I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time I've endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise, as a lawyer and as his friend. And that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well, defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin exchange. As you wish, my lord. But you know, there's still stuff we need to find out about with Scythe. Because it seems like there was more to her story. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the Assassin exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Reinosuke Naruhodo? Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction, you're convinced, lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Okay.
Hold it! Hold it!
So you're not what the general public referred to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey. Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though, that one by one defendants who'd been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecution were killed? Let me answer that question by posing another. If one by one defendants who'd been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. I've been investigating the truth as to where Gregson's involvement. You say for years. How long exactly? Since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom, 10 years ago now. And your investigations led you somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying. I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. A friend, even. It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the Yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found his secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learned of the location he'd noted only as grouse, and the appointment at 5 p.m. on the 31st. Though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate.
Hold it!
But why did you go to that specific location? I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock, I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the Inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed by you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Kibun, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Ha! A ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. Think what you will, it doesn't change the truth.
Hold it!
There is a link between you and Gregson, though. Of course, we were close acquaintances. We'd worked on numerous cases together. I considered the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a number of important lessons. He did? Such as what? Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like. Well, that was convincing. Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. And in any case, I understand that it was several years ago now that he was invited to work at a Japanese university. That's right, he was a visiting professor at the Imperial Yume University of Tokyo. It should be unambiguously clear, then, that no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I had no motive for sending some assassin across the oceans to kill the man. It sounds plausible enough, and I want to believe it, but something about this just doesn't sit right with me. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind... Whoops. Convincing testimony. Certainly, with no apparent connection between the three men, there's no way to establish a motive. The testimony seems unassailable as far as I can see. Oh dear me, what a bleak expression. I agree, there doesn't appear to be any particular link between them at first glance. With the inclusion of one other person... I must be overthinking it, surely. Another person, Mr. Neverhodo. I need to think back over all the information we've gleaned so far. Alright, and I'll review my notes about the case and all the evidence in the court record. I think I might know. Could it be that Lord Van Zeeks has something to hide after all? John H. Wilson signed the Clint Van Zeeks autopsy.
But was it really Cthulhu?
Well, he did everything else, but Wilson signed it.
Okay.
And so he has a connection to Van Zeeks, and Gregson was the one who opened up that autopsy that was able to catch Father Asogi. Like, I want to say was... That was John H. Wilson. And that's for Clint Van Zeeks. So, I want to say it's this.
Good job.
What is this? An autopsy report. Wait, this is 10 years old, from the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zeeks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again, the Professor. I've personally relating to that case. I know that at the time autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victims' souls, and for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the Professor for his crimes with the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death? That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason, the secret has been threatened and needs protecting, which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Order at once. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death, but it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it, which is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost.
He's not concerned, is he?
No. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku, but my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Kawama, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? And what, you're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor, there's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So you admit it then, the evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated. It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak. I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it. That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. The results of Clint Van Zieks' autopsy were fabricated. Then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Baroque Van Zieks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly, and as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Baroque Van Zieks.
Or Strongheart.
Guess it could.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you just told the court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Gregson really fabricated evidence for that trial 10 years ago. I heard it with my own ears, his shameful admission. In that case, I know the name of the Reaper. Whoa! What? Lord Van Zieks? I gave no such orders, I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Van Zieks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there was only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You? I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is...
Dun, dun, dun. How did it say Gory was?
19. Wow. So we're really gonna say Strongheart, right?
Yeah.
I don't see any sight here.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results. It's the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother Lord Clint Van Zieks had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks, 10 years ago I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy report, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector in the corner to break the law 10 years ago, and that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. That's utterly untrue. But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say... I forget how the system works in your little backwater country, but in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Order in court, following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeek's autopsy.
There is.
There is. Like, can we call her because she's not a picture on the thing? He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. I wanted so much for him to be alright.
I wonder if he's Gory's dad.
Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Drunkard. Oh, it's not her. But there's still one ray of hope. Gory. Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. But you know, it's true though, because I didn't want to believe it, but I know earlier in the game, and I think it was the second game, he talked about basically his dream of having the best a law enforcement agency and all that. But I could have sworn he said something. He didn't say the ends justify the means, but there was some kind of implication about it. At all costs. And if somebody is not guilty, but he thinks is guilty, he's the Reaper. And it makes so much sense, but I
didn't want to believe it.
I didn't want to believe it. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who are we, Nosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. Let's just make sure. I don't think it's any of these people. Or could it be him? I don't think it has to do with the autopsy,
I think it's
though.
Gory.
Take that!
Denied. What? I want to know why. And I want to know why you're proposing to call such a witness with that look of utter desperation on your face. In other words, you're wide off the mark, Rinosuke, very wide. I think it's the governor.
Did you already save?
No, but... Well, I mean, I saved before, but... Hold on. Where was the autosave? 809... 819... Okay, yeah, I gotta save. Dum 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 dum. I think it is the governor. No, I know. I'll get it right this time. Unless we're calling Strongheart himself.
Take that!
Whoops. Boy, I had a very dramatic, if it's Strongheart himself. Okay, so it might be the governor.
Take that!
What?
Alright, we gotta see.
Okay, let's think this one through, because,
I thought for sure it was Gory. Mikotoba? Because he was riding under the pin of, Wilson?
Okay, Mikotoba. I don't think we'd have to get Jigoku back.
Take that!
Heaven help us, another Japanese. Wow. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Yujin Mikotoba 16 years ago, he came to London with Shishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Yes! Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy lab 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We can summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Stronghunter has no intention of summoning anyone he knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. Oh boy. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father.
What?
Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Shishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings, willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. That will be all. I hereby declare this case over. What? Oh, God. Mr. Sholmes, this is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once. Richard Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Shishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mael Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really, and why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question. If I may, we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellow, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend, to nod along to the prevarications of your superiors? Order in the court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no right to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence. That's right, the judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But what would that really do? Since dark things occurring behind the scenes, dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly see? What's... The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right, we need to clear this up before the young Japanese fellow goes into custody. Lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself of this outlandish accusation. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. Well, my lord, you hear the voice of the British Justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? Sholmes knows all. My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo? Ah, yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you? Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards, and a reminder, if you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug if you please. Oh boy, he's not leaving, technically. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to... Oh god, yeah, Hailstrom. I should have known from his name. No! Oh well.
What a good stopping place.
Yeah, I can tell you're getting kind of tired, but oh my god! The next time we gotta finish this.
Okay. Played for a good while.
Yes, we did. Man, that was nuts.
I didn't want to believe he did.
I didn't either.
I thought Jody had.
Ah.
Whoa.
Whoa, she is fair.
Wait, are we stopping?
Yes. But we saw that, so... Okay. Only stopping because you're tired!
Yeah.
But we must finish this soon.
Okay.
Because, you know, cliffhanger. Alrighty, till next